is with you, it cannot be done. Do you nothing that I say?
Master, moving stones around is one thing. This is totally different.
No, no different. Only different in your mind. You must unlearn what you have learned.
All right, I'll give it a try.
No, try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.
And welcome back to Coaching with the Bible. That quote you just heard is famous from the Star Wars movies, the training sequence of Luke Skywalker under the tutelage of course, Yoda. This is Coaching with the Bible, episode number 135, season 3, episode 26. This week's portion, the portion known as Shmini. It is the third in the book of Leviticus. And we're going to shift a little bit here this week. We're going to focus on something else. The last few weeks we did a lot about Passover. And in the next number of weeks, we're going to focus a little bit on the work known as the Ethics of the Fathers, in Hebrew known as Pirkei Avot. It is a tractate of Mishnah, so it's part of the corpus of Mishnayot. And the custom is that after the holiday of Passover, to study those chapters. And it's a mix of enormous wisdom and depth coming from, our greatest sages over the course of the, early generations, the Tannaitic period, around the time of the destruction of the Second Temple, the 1st century, 2nd century, 3rd century AD. And it's their principles, it's their mantras, it's the mottos, the things that they lived by. You want to call them hashtags of the day. That would be maybe an appropriate way to sort of think about it. So when you think about certain people, these are the things that you think about with respect to them, because these are the things that they said, and these are the ways in which they lived. And so this week, we're going to just pull out one portion of one paragraph in the first chapter of the Ethics of the Fathers. And our topic this week, now I'm getting to it finally, is the topic of mentors. The quote from Yoda, the moment of Yoda mentoring Luke Skywalker in the ways of the Force and how to be a Jedi. It's one of the prime examples from all of cinematography, from all movies. There are others. But I want to talk about mentors. And by the way, coming out of the holidays, I hope all of you had great holidays this week. Holiday Passover just completed midweek. Holiday of Easter earlier in the week. Ramadan, I think, is actually still ongoing. But the power and the value of great mentors in our lives. So the verse tells us, this is in chapter 1, verse 6, or chapter 1, paragraph 6. It's a statement of a gentleman by the name of Joshua, the son of Parachia, in Hebrew known as Yehoshua ben Parachia, and he says, among other things, make for yourself a rabbi. It's an interesting statement. A lot would translate into it as make for yourself a teacher, probably appropriate as a way to translate it. It comes up again actually later on in the same chapter. And it's clear as day throughout the course of history that having teachers is fundamentally important. And that simply learning on our own, studying completely on our own without tutelage is not in our best interest and does not yield our best success. So it's an interesting statement that he makes there. Again, chapter 1, verse 6. So what does it exactly mean that you should make for yourself a teacher, make for yourself a rabbi? And so among the different commentaries, there are all kinds of ways of understanding what that is. And they're in our own language, and when we're speaking in English, we use different terminology to talk about that personage in our lives. So sometimes it's a mentor, sometimes it's a coach, sometimes it's a teacher, sometimes it's all three, sometimes it's a mix and a blend or a synthesis of all of them at the same time, and we have difficulty parsing those things in our lives. But I do want to focus here today on the idea of having mentors and encouraging each and every one of you to develop what's known as a PBOD, a personal board of directors. It's basically your mix of personal mentors, and we'll talk about that more as we go a little bit forward in today's presentation. Admittedly, having mentors is something that I've sought, but I have not yet necessarily succeeded enough in having enough mentors in enough areas of my life. I've had teachers, I've had many rabbis, I've had coaches, but I can't say I've had enough mentors for my liking. I remember years ago when I was interviewing for rabbinic positions, one of the things that people would ask me on these different rabbinic committees, these placement committees, they would ask me, who I would go to with certain questions. So someone, a congregant would ask me a very difficult, complex question. Who do I turn to for my insight, for the advice, for the answers? And I would often answer back that it really depended on the type of question, that I had figures and rabbis and teachers and mentors in different areas. And so if it was really like a thought question, purely just an intellectual exercise in figuring something out, then there was a certain person who had really, really affected the way I thought and the way I broke down questions. If it was more a question of how to handle something, let's say, politically in the community, so that I had a different person who I sought out for political types of questions, either political hot potatoes or footballs or things that on the surface felt to me that they were precarious, prickly, and potentially dangerous. And so there was a certain person or two that I would turn to who I felt at that time were certainly mentors for me in that space. And not just teachers and not coaches. Mentors specifically. And so we have to break those things down into what we're talking about here. So I want to encourage, again, everybody to sort of seek out mentors. And there are different kinds of mentors. So let's start there. There are mentors who are obvious mentors, people who have massively succeeded in an area, in a space in your life that you think is important. And you need to seek those people out because they're obviously mentors. When I talk about mentoring, what I'm talking here very importantly is seeking somebody out who really can tell you exactly what to do. It's someone who really has walked that walk already. That person has already walked that path so many times. They have tread that path so many times, almost as if they're the ones who've made it happen first time ever in the world. And you're seeking out from them the insight, the advice, the methodology, the action steps, the tasks that you need to take to get the same result or a better result than the mentor got. That is mentoring. So it's really very much someone who has the results that you want to learn from. But it's not purely that. It cannot be completely separate and distinct from some sort of an emotional or empathic approach to the mentee. So it's not cold. Mentors have to care. The person who's a mentor is not necessarily a coach. It can be a coach. Coaching, and we've talked a lot about coaching here, coaching is really not the coach telling the person what to do. It's really creating the space to allow the person to really find their own answers, to really explore the ins and outs of a circumstance, a situation, a potentiality, and to really find those answers within themselves. It's very much deeper, perhaps, about human behavior, and it's very often about mostly accountability. Teaching is neither of those two. Teaching most often is simply sharing other people's principles, sharing the theories or the ideas or the knowledge that has come over the course of time through textbooks and one's own learning. And I think many of us have had many teachers in our lives, and very few of them cross the barrier into the space of being either coaches or actually mentors. So many people that I taught with years and years ago in the different places and schools that I taught with, I thought were phenomenal teachers. And I learned a lot from them as teachers. Very few of them would I consider mentors in any way, shape, or form. So much of the knowledge that they had was valuable, but perhaps maybe the methodology or the approach was not something I was looking to emulate or to copy in any way, shape, or form. So they were great teachers of content, of material, but maybe not the rest of it. And so we're looking specifically inside the space of mentoring, someone who's really telling you what it is that they do. And mentors really, again, the value of them in our lives is super important. This is why I'm recommending it, because I don't think we necessarily get there on our own. It's a great quote from Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he said, your mentors in life are important, so choose them wisely, right? It's not an accident. Yoda is the person that Luke Skywalker goes to. So it's important that we think about it. So there are obvious mentors and there are non-obvious mentors. The obvious mentors are the people who are perhaps the most famous and the most successful in a certain space, who have done things phenomenally well. The difficulty with them as mentors is that we often don't have access to them, and it's hard to use them, review them as a resource for us directly in our lives. There are non-obvious mentors. There are people perhaps who are around us who are also quite successful. It may be a smaller niche, but that's the niche that you need, or that's an aspect of your life that you're looking to improve upon. And therefore, you're going into that space, and the non-obvious mentor, to your benefit, has way more time and accessibility and availability to provide you with their phenomenal wisdom. So let's say you're in business, and so you'll find a person who is a phenomenally successful small business owner. They own 9 different businesses. They have income streams from all over the place, and they're what you aspire to be. But you never get to them, or to get time with them, impossible. They're an obvious choice as a mentor. The non-obvious choice is the person who lives next door to you, who's been quite successful in their business over the course of 30 years and has a lot to teach you, a lot to mentor you about, a lot to glean from that person, and then maybe they're a non-obvious mentor. You might actually think of them almost specifically as a genius in a specific space. And when you think of the person as a genius in that specific space, then you actually appreciate that they're quite valuable. But again, it's really important to appreciate that it is a delicate balance. It's a great quote from Steven Spielberg. The delicate balance of mentoring someone is not creating them in your own image, but giving them the opportunity to create themselves. So we're not looking at mentoring or from mentors to be reincarnated as them again. It's really to learn from them the steps to create your own success in your way, in your space, and that's really important. So it's important to appreciate that that's how that works. When we take it back to the original statement from the Ethics of the Fathers, from that work, so the commentaries go deep on this. And they talk about the idea that it's not specifically talking about your personal teacher. It's very important also that a person has a singular person, and certainly in the Jewish tradition, this is very much the case, a singular person who they go to with their questions. These might be questions of practice, religious practice, of philosophy, and how to think about certain things. When in doubt what to do, you go to that person. I know over the years, there is one rabbi that I used to go to with all of my very difficult questions. And part of the reason why I went to him specifically was I thought he was obviously brilliant and incredibly knowledgeable. But I would say more so my experience of him was that he was very open to admitting when he didn't know either, and that he would then take my questions to his person. So it was like, very much felt like I was part of this chain, this link in this chain, but I can also appreciate the humility that this person displayed. Remember, uniquely, one particular circumstance that I was dealing with, and I was a rabbi, it was a question that was above my pay grade. And I certainly didn't know the answer. And I went to him with my question. And he told me the same thing. He thought about it. He said, this question's above my pay grade. And he said, let's go together to my rabbi and let's ask him the question. And I was like blown away by that. So when it is that we're sort of choosing mentors, we have to appreciate that for us as the mentee, this is a sort of our ability to establish a personal level of humility here. That is to say that we don't know all the answers. We should never think that we know all the answers because we don't. And that we have to establish some level of humility. So even if the person as a mentor is someone who we don't think is quote unquote better than us, overall more successful than us, it's important for us to sort of diminish ourselves, belittle ourselves to a degree, let's put that in quotes, and put ourselves in a space where we can actually be mentored by this person. So it doesn't require that the person be greater than us in a lot of different ways. They need to be greater than us perhaps in one specific way. That's the way that we're looking for. And it's important for us to appreciate that these people in our lives play a massive role in our success. You know, the idea that they talk about it takes a village for success, part of that village isn't just having people who play supporting roles. There are people who are partners in that, you know, in village of success, but there are also people who are playing the role of mentor in getting us to that level of success. And one of the things that we have to appreciate, and this is a great comment that comes from someone by the name of Rabbeinu Yonah. Rabbi Yonah was a commentary, I think in the 14th century, and he wrote a very famous commentary on this work specifically. And he says, in this case, with respect to a teacher, a role model, a mentor in this way, specifically mentor today, it doesn't require that that person know more than me. It could be that I know a lot too. But it's very often the case that having the person to go to with the question and seeking them out because they have some experience, even if it's a similar experience, but they have some experience that might be slightly different than our own, that we can learn from that person. So we're equal in level of knowledge and even equal in the level of years of experience, but perhaps the quality of that experience is different, and therefore that person qualifies perhaps in the role of mentor. So even as I said earlier, that we're choosing to have one person who answers our deepest, darkest, most difficult questions, we do want to diversify, and that's the first thing we want to talk about. When we talk about how do I develop a personal board of directors, we want to think about ourselves in the space of understanding that it's important for us to have a diversified group of people who play the role of mentor for us. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is we have to think about what are the things that I need to have happen? What do I want to happen? Simple as that. What are the goals that I'm looking to achieve? Where are my blind spots? Perhaps we talked about blind spots some time ago, maybe a year and a half ago or so, that I need to work on. And when I start to think about that, I can start to think inside the space of mentoring, the mentors that I'm choosing. If we wanted to flip it over, we wanted to be the mentor in a situation. So what would I need to bring to the table to be a proper mentor for someone? It's not simply the experience, as I mentioned before. And it's not simply that I want to turn them into me and my experience. It's certainly not true. We're trying to do a lot of different things. And so how do we get to the space of being a mentor? We want, for mentors, we're looking for people who are going to focus on really all of us. Someone who's going to be thinking about all of our success. Someone who's thinking about the ends that we're looking to accomplish. Someone who's going to help us fill our toolkit, right, with all the things that we need in it to actually get to the success that we want. That could be one person. It could be someone in your business space who's 30 years ahead of you, who can fill all those different things. Likely it's not. And so what we want to do then is develop this idea, which is, I think, really interesting sort of idea, which is the personal board of directors because as I saw in one article, you're the CEO of your life and you're the CEO of your career. And so when you think of yourself in that space, that I'm a business of one, I'm at the center of this one. Now, how do I develop that? So I'm not going to just put one person on there, one type of person. I'm going to diversify. When you think about, there's a great book about the cabinet that President Lincoln put together. It's a diverse and sometimes controversial or disagreeable, not the right word, a group of people who disagreed with each other fundamentally, who made up his cabinet. Because it was the mix of those people and their opinions in those roles, in those seats, who made him the success perhaps that he was. So in our personal board of directors, we're looking for people who fit into different areas of our life, who obviously can expand our network and open our doors to new people, to new opportunities, even open our eyes to certain things. People are going to provide support for us along the way. They're going to celebrate with you. They're going to be there in your milestones and your successes. They're going to develop you. And so if you're coming to them with a specific business problem or a specific personal growth problem, and they've been there before, they're going to not only point out the things that you should be doing, they're also going to point out the things that you shouldn't be doing, or the things that you need to grow in, the space that you need to develop in to get to where you're going to go. They're going to challenge you. So we want people who are going to challenge us. We're going to people who are going to advocate for us. And of course, we want people who are going to hold us accountable. And so when we're thinking about this, right, it doesn't have to be in one specific area. So I could have personal board of directors. I saw someone online who commented it this way, that he has a personal board of directors of people he actually doesn't know personally, but people he reads and he listens to when they post content, someone who is focused on physical fitness, someone who's focused on mental focus, someone who's focused on business development, personal development, someone who is sort of a tech mentor, right? All those different areas are in the person's best interest, even if that person doesn't know. The better way is a personal board of directors of people that you do know. And you can, if you want to, bring them together for a conversation. That might be fascinating to have this group of people actually come together, in a session about you, almost like a live personal 360 about you. But it doesn't have to be that. And so the personal board of directors, or the personal board of mentors, is a critical way for you to develop, and for you to grow, for you to become the person that you want to be. I would add one piece here. It's really important that among the group of mentors are people who are truth tellers. People who are going to tell you the things that you do and don't do. People who are telling you where it is that you really do need to improve. People who are not going to simply just, pat you on the back and say you're awesome, you're doing great. We want mentors to be people who are going to teach us and show us from their experience where we're going wrong, where we fundamentally need to improve. We're not even here talking about playing the role of mentor. Here we're just talking about the role of I want to be mentored, I want to be the mentee, and who is it that I need to focus and think about and bring into my life to make my mentoring experience for my success. So I'll end with a quote from John Wooden. John Wooden was a great coach from UCLA. But John Wooden actually viewed himself more, as much as he made his living as a coach, he always talked about the idea in a lot of the writings and in his talks, you can listen to them all online, that he was a mentor, that he was a mentee, and he was certainly a teacher. But here's the quote. What it comes down to, I believe, is that mentoring often involves telling people what they need to hear rather than what they want to hear. When you're able to be humbly honest with someone about a situation with which you have personal experience, even if you risk angering or hurting that person, you are offering the most valuable gift of all. And so in seeking out mentors, we're seeking out people who are going to be honest with us, who are going to be helpful to us, and those who are going to be with us in the path towards our greatest success. That is Coaching with the Bible this week, with a unique take and a twist that takes us into the ethics of the fathers. Looking forward to seeing you next week. Coaching with the Bible.